Israel has been found deeply wanting on many, many occasions, from the United Nations resolutions to international legal decisions, and the negotiating people, the people that are supposed to be the midwives of the negotiation, the quartet, are hardly disinterested parties in this. I'd be much happier if I saw countries such as South Africa or Brazil trying to bring about negotiations rather than the not disinterested parties of the European Union, the United States and Russia in this respect. And so I would want to see some difference going on there. But until international law is recognised, the humanitarian rights of everybody are recognised, the rights of recognition, the right of return and the right to be able to live in peace, then I don't see a peace coming about. And so I think we have to start from the point of view, it's not equal, start from the point of view that the Palestinian people are overwhelmingly dispossessed and poor and denied their rights. The people of Israel are acknowledged their rights within the 67 borders and are a very powerful economy, largely through United States support. Let's start on the basis of the need for equality and equality of opportunity, and then we can make some progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all our speakers for the first question. So now we'll move on to, I'm going to take 2 questions from the audience. If the questions could be on the theme of solutions, that would be really helpful, and aimed at all of our speakers, that would also be really helpful. So I'll try and take one from kind of this side and one from this side. So for the first question, if you'd like to raise your hand. Yes, in the white there. Yes. What's your question?
That the Israelis have been extraordinarily problematic at recognizing the real grievances of the Palestinians. And the Palestinians thus far have been forced to side with Salafi groups, Hamas, etc. So the question here I have to the pro-Israeli side, and maybe the pro-Palestinian side can sort of provide their commentary. To what extent, realistically, really, has the Israeli government been willing to negotiate and acknowledge Hamas as a serious representation of the Palestinian people? Because I don't think they have. And to the Palestinian side, they seem to blame the U.S., especially the gentleman on the far right, God bless you. But, seriously, have the Palestinians honestly thought of themselves as willing to make an allegiance with the United States and the EU, saying, we want to be your ally, we want to be an asset, we really want to bring stability? Or are they really just trying to promote the pro-Palestinian cause?
Thank you for your question. Well, I'll answer that one in just a second. If I could take one other question. Yeah, that's fine. Just one other question. I'll go with someone from this side of the room. Yes.
Hi, thank you. My question, unfortunately, isn't in regards to a solution, unfortunately. It's the first question that popped into my head. I wanted to ask the panel on both sides, is Israel an apartheid state? And depending, obviously, on your answer, could you...
No, sorry, we can't have that. We can't have that as a question. I'm very sorry. So, no.
Okay.
I've been told I can't have that as a question.
You at least have to justify your reasons. I think this is an open and honest debate. I'm not trolling or anything. I want to hear from both sides and justify your answer. It's a simple question. I'm sure.
We've been told we can't have that specifically as a question.
I wasn't told, so...
So, can we have another question, please?
That is ridiculous. You can have the microphone back, but that's ridiculous.
Yes, I'll have you, please, sir.
Hello. Hi. I was just listening to the supposed solutions, and I was just wondering why, from some of the panel, especially towards my right, there wasn't any solutions. It was just more talking about justice. But I basically feel that when people are searching for justice based on what's been happening over the last 60 years, you can never actually come to a proper peaceful agreement if you're just talking about we're going to right all these wrongs first before we actually move to a solution. I wanted to hear mainly from the pro-Palestinian side how they think searching for this justice will actually make a solution where people can actually live in peace and live instead of constantly fighting and killing each other. That's what I want to know.
Thank you very much. Okay, if I can start from my left to the right, we did it from the other side, if that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Chair, I don't want to challenge your ruling, but I'd like to know who told you you can't have a question about the apartheid.
Firstly, it's not within the solution question, but so we're not.
Well, Archbishop Desmond Tutu thinks there is an apartheid parallel in the occupation of the West Bank and the settler roads and the way in which Palestinian people are treated there. So I don't see why, if we're having a serious discussion, we can't bring in serious people such as him, who've done such a great deal of work to try and bring about the end of apartheid in South Africa, and he is very concerned about the situation facing Palestinian people, and I think we should be allowed to discuss that. My concern in the question of negotiations is the way in which the United States provides a great deal of money for the Israeli state and has consistently used its veto at the UN to veto resolutions that have gone through or tried to go through the Security Council, and indeed have said in terms that if the Security Council votes to recognise a Palestinian state, then it will use its power of veto, and the British government has adopted an incredibly strong and brave position and decided to abstain on this subject. And so we are one vote short of recognition and one vote short of the US using its veto on that particular way forward. Now, I would argue that whilst that won't bring about a solution to everything, I think the recognition by membership of UNESCO is a useful way forward. The other question that was raised by Jack is an interesting one, and the question of the relationship and recognition of Hamas by the Israeli government. And I've heard the narrative from Israeli speakers on many occasions and supporters of Israel in the House of Commons that they are not prepared to negotiate with Hamas and don't think they should. Israel has actually negotiated at great length with Hamas and has a regular contact with Hamas, and that's how the release of Shalit came about on the prisoner exchange quite recently. Whatever one thinks of any particular party, either in Israel or Palestine, if they have the degree of support that Hamas clearly do have amongst the Palestinian people, then if you're going to bring about any kind of peace, any kind of solution, you have to negotiate with them, and you have to try and work with them. That has got to be the way forward. You don't bring about peace by negotiating only with the people you agree with. You bring about the peace by negotiating with the people that you disagree with. And so I would hope there's going to be that degree of recognition. So thanks for those questions, and I hope those two answers are of some help. Thank you.
I'd like to start by actually answering the question about the apartheid state, if the chair doesn't mind. I'll be very brief.
Just for a moment. I think perhaps the issue is not that we're not allowed to discuss sort of inequalities within various states, but rather the problem is with the emotivity of the language being used. So obviously that discussion may be something which needs to be had, but perhaps we could use more accessible language.
Okay, I won't use the word apartheid. I'll abbreviate it by using the word A. I've just come back from South Africa, where there was a tribunal called the Russell Tribunal on Palestine, where they discussed the topic of aid in Israel and Palestine. And I would encourage those of you who are interested in the topic to go to the tribunal's website. It's called the Russell Tribunal on Palestine, and to read its findings. That was when Archbishop Desmond Tutu had spoken about this issue. And there was a jury. On that jury, there were also, well, you can find out for yourself, but there was also members of Israel, people from Israel, Holocaust survivor, poets spoke about this issue, and there's a video of it. And my friend to my right has written a book as well on this topic, which is for sale over there, and it's entitled that word, which I'm not allowed to say, so you don't read it. Someone asked a question to what extent. Okay, that's the other side. If I understand the gentleman from America who works for the Marines asked a question why the Palestinians have not made an alliance with the US and the European unions to become a strategic asset or something. I think if I've understood the question correct, I think the Palestinians have tried to do that, but they don't have the clout within the US domestic political system to be as effective as the Israelis. But they have been negotiating with Washington. There are very close relations, both in the security sphere, diplomatically, with the Americans on the ground in Ramallah and Jericho, and there are frequent discussions with the two sides. I would encourage you to read something called the Palestine Papers, which were these papers that were declassified, or should I say leaked actually, earlier this year, by Al Jazeera and the Guardian newspaper. And these include classified conversations of meetings between Condoleezza Rice and Palestinian Foreign Minister Saib Erekat, who I understand spoke here. So you can read those documents to see for yourself how close relations actually are. Problem is that the Palestinians do not have the clout, I guess, to negotiate on the same platform with the Israelis. They don't have anything to negotiate with except their existence. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to bring together. Just going to bring.
I've already told speakers that they can answer questions as they see fit. So it may be answered along. It'll be answered as it goes along.
Okay, I'm going to try and bring together a couple of things there, which were, from what I remember at least, there was a desire for specifics and also a desire to talk about not just justice over 60 years, but a justice for now. As has been mentioned, obviously I've written a lot about the issue of Israeli apartheid, and I don't believe in using emotive language. I believe in a kind of cold, clear, analytical presentation of policies on the ground and using language that is appropriate to describe them. And far more offensive than any language potential is, of course, the actual policies themselves, which are based on ethnic cleansing and expulsion and continued occupation. So to talk about a solution now, I personally believe that the best possible solution that will protect both the rights of Jewish Israelis and Palestinians is some form of single democratic state in all of what we refer to as Palestine, Israel now. There is already today a de facto one state. There is an Israeli regime that controls the lives of Palestinians, whether they're citizens and having their homes demolished in the Negev, or being denied the right to live with their spouse if the spouse is from the West Bank. Whether we're talking about Palestinians in East Jerusalem who also have their homes demolished, can have their residency rights removed. We're talking about Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza who live under a brutal military regime. Or, of course, the Palestinian refugees who continue to be excluded from their homeland since 1948 and the Nakba. So this is the reality that we face today, and the challenge, of course, is can we turn a de facto one state that is based on the principle of one group having more privileges than another into a reality where both sides have their rights protected, and instead of focusing on kind of ethnic separation and the idea that it's impossible for the two sides to live together, actually there's something bigger and braver that can be kind of aimed for here, and that is an anti-apartheid policy there, and one that believes in the idea that justice and equality shouldn't be offensive. Thanks, Owen.
Obviously, we can't cover everything that's been raised, and I would like to come back to settlements in a future answer, but now I'd like to say something, first of all, about Hamas, answer to your question, something about one state, something about